All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into one of the biggest questions out there. Does all the order we see in the universe point to some kind of designer? Is it all just a cosmic accident, or was it created on purpose?
And look, this isn't just some abstract philosophical game. The question really comes from a pretty startling observation scientists have made about, well, the very fabric of reality. When physicists look at the fundamental rules of our universe, they find something wild. It's not just that they're okay for life to exist, they seem almost impossibly perfect for it.
So that number you're looking at, that's the estimated odds against our early universe just happening to have the incredibly precise, orderly conditions it needed, purely by chance. That unlikeliness is so staggering, it's led a lot of very smart people to a powerful idea that we're living in a fine-tuned universe. And that idea, that's the hook for this whole debate.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at this cosmic coincidence. Then we'll dive into the classic debate it sparked, the whole Watchmaker thing. After that, we'll explore a really interesting theological way of looking at it, and we'll wrap up with a key takeaway about how all these ideas fit together. Right, part 1, the cosmic coincidence. So what on earth does fine-tuning actually mean? Well, a great way to think about it is like our universe has this massive control panel with a bunch of knobs, and these knobs control the really fundamental stuff, the strength of gravity, the charge of an electron, the basic rules of the game. The really bizarre discovery is that these knobs seem to be set to the exact values needed for a universe like ours, with stars and planets and us, to even be possible. Just take gravity. If you were to turn that knob just a tiny, tiny bit stronger, the whole universe would have just collapsed back in on itself right after the Big Bang. Poof, gone. And if you turned it just a hair weaker, stars and galaxies never would have formed in the first place. This incredible razor's edge balancing act, well, that's the foundation of what's called the modern argument from design. So you can see how an observation like that just lights the fuse on a huge philosophical debate. And it's one that has been raging for centuries, really. It pits two very different ideas about creation, two very different kinds of watchmakers, you could say, smack dab against each other. Okay, so the formal name for this whole idea is the teleological argument. Now that sounds complicated, but it's pretty simple. It comes from the Greek word telos, which just means purpose or goal. All it's really saying is that if you see something that looks like it has a purpose or a design in the world, that's the effect, it's reasonable to guess there was a designer, the cause.
And the most famous example of this comes from a guy named William Paley back in 1802. He came up with this brilliant analogy. He said, look, if you're walking across a field and you find a watch on the ground, you don't think it just grew there, right? You know it had a watchmaker. His point was, the universe, with all its complexity, is infinitely more intricate than a watch. So shouldn't we conclude it had a maker too?
But then, along came Charles Darwin. His theory of evolution offered a totally different explanation, a powerful, natural one. He basically proposed a blind watchmaker, the process of natural selection. It has no goal, no foresight, no plan at all. It's just random mutation and survival of the fittest. But over millions and millions of years, that unguided process can create the stunning complexity of life that looks like it was designed.
And honestly, even before Darwin, the philosopher David Hume had already poked a big hole in Paley's core analogy. Hume's point was this: sure, we've all seen watches being made, so we know they have makers. But who among us has ever seen a universe being made? We have absolutely zero experience with that. It's a one-off event, so you can't really make a reliable comparison to something like a watch. And more recently, thinkers like Richard Dawkins take that a step further. He asks, okay, so who designed the designer? His argument is that if you say something complex, like the universe needs a designer, well, then any being capable of designing a universe must be even more complex. And if that's true, then who designed that designer? You see the problem? It just creates a never-ending chain that doesn't actually solve anything.
Then there's another fascinating counter-idea called the anthropic principle. And this one kind of flips the whole question on its head. It basically says, of course we observe a universe that's compatible with our existence. If the universe were any different, we literally wouldn't be here to notice or ask the question. So it's not that we're lucky, it's that our very existence creates a kind of selection bias. We can only see a universe that was able to produce us.
And that leads us to the last big counter, the multiverse. This theory suggests that our universe might just be one of countless others, maybe even an infinite number of them. And if that's the case, it's like rolling a bajillion dice. Eventually, you're bound to get any combination, right? So with enough universes out there, one just like ours with all the right laws for life isn't just possible, it's statistically inevitable. So you can see, between evolution, these flawed analogies, and the multiverse, the classic design argument is up against some really serious challenges.
Okay, so the classic design argument definitely has its work cut out for it. But what if the whole idea of the universe as a machine or a watch is the wrong way to think about it in the first place? The source material for this explainer introduces a Quranic framework that completely reframes the debate. It suggests we should view the universe not as a machine to be reverse engineered, but more like a book, filled with signs that we're meant to read and reflect on.
And the key concept here is this word ayat. In this context, it means signs, or tokens, or proofs we can see in nature. And these are viewed as deliberate pointers to God's existence, power, and wisdom. So from this perspective, the goal totally shifts. It's not about trying to prove a designer exists like you would in a science lab. It's about looking at the entire cosmos as a collection of signs that invites you to think, to reflect, and to get a sense of the author through their work.
And look at these examples. What's really interesting here is the focus. It's not on super complex, static things like an eyeball. It's on dynamic, ongoing processes, the alternation of night and day, the winds, the rain that brings the earth to life. These are seen as continuous, active signs of a creator who is also a sustainer.
And this is where it gets really interesting, especially with something like evolution. This table shows how it can be framed. It's not about denying the science of evolution at all. Instead, it's about reinterpreting evolution as the method God uses to create. So what looks like pure randomness to us, from this perspective, it's all happening within God's knowledge and serves a higher purpose. It's a totally different lens on the same scientific facts.
Okay, but what about all the design flaws people point to, the imperfections? Well, the Quranic framework has an answer for that too. They aren't seen as mistakes or evidence against a designer. Instead, they're understood in one of two ways, either as the natural limitations of created physical stuff or as serving some kind of higher divine wisdom, maybe related to our own growth or tests in life.
And this perspective even has a take on the multiverse. It's a fascinating move. Instead of seeing the multiverse as a random, godless alternative, it can be absorbed into the framework. It can be seen as an incredible manifestation of God's infinite power and boundless creativity. The idea is to absorb scientific theories, not be replaced by them.
And all of this brings us to our final part, and really the key takeaway. It's an idea that frames this whole centuries-old debate in a new, and I think, a really helpful light.
The central argument here is that science and faith aren't necessarily asking competing questions. They might just be asking different kinds of questions. They're not always at war. They can be seen as two different complementary toolkits for understanding the different layers of our reality.
To put it another way, science is absolutely masterful at explaining the intricate workings of the clock, how the gears turn, how the springs work. But theology and philosophy are asking a different question. Was there a reason for the clock to be made in the first place? See? One can fully embrace every single scientific discovery about how the universe works, from the Big Bang to evolution, while still asking those deeper questions about meaning and purpose. One is about mechanism, the other is about meaning.
So in the end, it really comes down to this. Is the universe a book of laws or a book of science? Is it just an accidental arrangement of physical rules, or is it a meaningful story, pointing to something more? Ultimately, the perspective you choose doesn't just shape what you think. It shapes how you see absolutely everything. And it's a question that invites all of us to just keep looking and to keep wondering.